And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
I'm tell you a history about Israel and Egypt and Africa, and they act like them in whole different places. I mean, if I told you Atlanta and Florida was in the South, I'm telling the truth, right? That's the same distance between Israel, Egypt, and Africa. Israel, Egypt, and Africa. Israel, Egypt, and Africa. If I told you Atlanta and Florida was in the South, I'm telling the truth, right? That's the same distance between Israel, Egypt, and Africa. Every black person that ain't Muslim is Christian. As far as our family go back. Guess what they don't tell us? How the fuck did all our black families become Christian overnight? How come they don't never tell you what the fuck we stopped doing so we could start doing this? So we could start doing this. So we could start doing this.
They say, go see the African History Museum. Why do they start when the boats came? Why don't they start with the drums?
When we was kings.
Oh, they don't want it, but we are kings. Mm-hmm. But the 400 years doesn't have to deal with slavery. It has to deal with the Bible. It has to deal with us being disobedient to God. Us as 12 tribes of Judah, as a member of the Hebrew people, we are still inside of our genocide. 50% of all black deaths a year is abortion.
That's why you called Israel. Is it real? No, it's not. How did we leave there black and come back white? How did we leave there black and come back white? How did we leave there black and come back white? How did we leave there black and come back white? Can somebody answer that for me? Can somebody answer that for me? Can somebody answer that for me? Can somebody answer that for me?
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
I want to say peace and blessings to everyone that's tuning in tonight. My apologies, had to push things up a little bit. well, back a little bit, about 15, 20 minutes, because of some other things that I had going on. But nevertheless, we're going to go ahead and get into it. I changed the lineup a little bit. Tomorrow, we're going to deal with the declaration of war. Tonight, we're going to deal with strange vines. All right. So let me just make that clear to everyone that's anticipating the declaration of war for this portion, for this block, this session for Christmas. We are going to deal with that tomorrow. We'll deal with that tomorrow night. But tonight, I want to deal with the thought of strange vines. So I'm going to share a lot of information. So I encourage you guys to take notes because, again, a lot of information is going to be shared. And take notes. And then from now into tomorrow evening, use that as an opportunity to, do your research, confirm the sources that I am using, because again, I know I am sharing a lot of sources. And again, I want you to make sure that, you guys keep me honest. You go make sure you vet the sources that I have shared. All right. So we're going to do the strange fruits or strange vines tonight. And tomorrow we'll do the declaration of war. And that's going to be pretty interesting. I'm going to share a lot of information with you. As I stated, that the Roman Catholic Church, Christianity, had declared war on our people. And there's no reason, just that alone should raise a red flag, the things that they had subjected our people to. So again, tomorrow night we'll deal with that. Tonight we're going to deal with strange vines, right? Because one of the things that I pointed out, that you can literally pick apart the entire Christmas holiday as well as some of the other pagan holidays, actually all of them. You can really pick it apart with the entire book of Jeremiah. So what we're going to do tonight, I'm going to use another section, another part of the book of Jeremiah to give you proper clarity on exactly how to use the text. And with this lesson tonight, we're going to pick apart some of the different things that we see within Christmas, right? And then we'll close out dealing with the Pope. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. Again, appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. I'll just give some shout outs to a few of you guys here, and then we'll get right into the lesson because we have a lot that we're going to cover. All right. We'll start from the top to the bottom before everyone jumps in. Let's see. I want to say peace and blessings to Benjamin. Appreciate you. I know I came a little late. My apologies. But if you get too sleepy, you may have to just catch it all in the replay. But I appreciate you. Who else in this? I appreciate all that came in early. I want to say Darnell Blackshear, peace and blessings to you. JD Israel, I want to say peace and blessings to you. Somebody said they popping bolos to stay awake. My apologies. Right. Want to say Shirley Greer, peace and blessings to you. Shalom to Sister Carol. Who else do we have here? Lemuria Johnson, Devorah Cotton, Yvette Riviera, say peace and blessings to you, sisters. And again, my apologies for the tardiness. Peace and blessings to Elder Brunson, Davion Murphy, Malak Yashar, Yukanan. I want to say Yakanan, excuse me. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Stephanie McMillan, peace and blessings to you. Sister Shelley, Shalom to you. Calvin, Brother Calvin, I want to say shalom to you. Inspired Identities, peace and blessings to you. Israelite wife, Desiree, I want to say shalom to you. Marcus Jones, Sister Shalon, Dr. Cal, I think that's Kit or whatever. So excuse me if I mispronounce your name. I want to say shalom to you. Miss B, Shauna Hall, We Live to Survive. I want to say shalom to you as well. My brother, Ernest Higgs, really appreciate you. I want to say shalom to you. Benita Jones, Souls of Our Ancestors, really appreciate you, sis, and keep putting those thought-provoking posts on Facebook. I really appreciate your support, especially over the past year or two. Really appreciate you. Jacqueline Pug, want to say greetings to you. Who else do we have here? King Franchise, peace and blessings to you. All right, so I tried to get as many as I could in here. Jeremiah, want to say peace and blessings to you. Brown Sugar, David Ben, Dawid Ben Israel, peace and blessings to you. My buddy Faith Music, and he's in the building. Great artist right here, family. Subscribe to him, look him up to purchase and support this artist right here, doing some great things. All right, Johnny Everhart, I want to say peace and blessings to you. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, let's get into it. Let's see here. I didn't see what he was saying here. Anyway, I'm not going to address it. I'm just going through the comments here, and I gave shout outs to someone. And anyway, I'm not even going to address that tonight. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. All right. So the doctrine of the destruction of people, strange vines. So let me enlarge in this screen here. Oh, just KT. Appreciate it, Dr. KT. All right. Thank you for the clarity. My apologies. All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. Okay. So the doctrine of the destruction of people. I'll say it again. The doctrine of destruction of people. That is the series that we're dealing with. And so we're going to continue pressing on the doctrine of the destruction of people. But tonight we are going to focus on strange vines. All right. Strange vines. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Remember, we set this up as a court case. So the first 2 days, I laid out my case about Christmas. I started off with dealing with swine. Last night, we dealt with another key portion of the text. We dealt with lynching. We went over the Christmas tree. All right. For those that have been here for both series, and even those that just joined in last night, just a little interaction here. So far, if you believe that Santa Claus, Christmas, the church, Catholicism, if you believe that they are guilty, if I am laying out my case, type in guilty. If you believe that so far I haven't laid out my case, type in innocent. If you been following this series the past couple of nights, just type, if you believe that so far, this whole system, Santa Claus is guilty, if I've really made a strong argument so far, type in guilty. If I need to do more work, which I will, type in innocent. All right. So far we see guilties here. We see Dr. KT. Let's see here. Guilty, Mr. The Original, Souls of Our Ancestors as well. Guilty. Let me see here. So far we have guilties. Sister Carol, guilty. Lakeisha, guilty. Brother Ernest, guilty. We have so far we have a number. So far as unanimous. So far, guilty. All right. So I still have more work to do. All right. So that's why you see Santa Claus in the handcuffs in the backdrop, because I'm pressing charges against Santa Claus. I'm pressing charges against this entire suppressive system. So again, I'm still going to lay out my case. I'm going to continue to thoroughly lay out my case. All right. But tonight we're going to lay out the case for a mixture of things that we're going to deal with tonight. But of course, the overall theme is strange vines. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Appreciate you guys' participation. All right. And then what we're going to do at the end of this series, right? All you guys that have participated in this, right? we're going to open up. We're going to have a live to where as though you guys could come in and you could tell why, based upon all the evidence that was presented, why you came to your guilty verdict. What was the convincing portion of this series that really, kind of set with you, that really caused you to make, really helped you with your decision. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to, the last lesson that we're going to do, the last episode, you will have the opportunity to bring your presentation or cast your vote publicly and say whether guilty or not. And you could just say why. And we're going to be very respectful with that. So here we go. Let's go ahead and continue to deal with the presentation of the evidence, right? You're the jury. You have a tough decision to make. May not be tough for most of you though. But anyway, you have a decision to make. And we're going to deal with the presentation of the evidence, Exhibit E. Exhibit E. Let's deal with the mistletoe. And I'm going to tie this in, especially when we get to the section or the episode for tomorrow night, when we deal with the declaration of war. We're going to tie this into that declaration. The mistletoe, the devil's fudge. Let me say that again. The mistletoe, the devil's fudge. This is what we are going to deal with. This is one of the things we're going to just really connect a lot of this stuff to. So the mistletoe, believe it or not, we can go into the text and debunk the mistletoe. And I'm going to show you some surprising facts for some of you guys, what the mistletoe really is. The mistletoe is also called the devil's fudge. Let me say that again. The mistletoe is also called the devil's fudge. Now, this is coming from CBS News, this source right here. 7 surprising facts about the mistletoe. Think the mistletoe is all about holiday romance? Think again. The festive plant, which also goes by the name devil's fudge, holds some sinister secrets. Right? And I'm not going to highlight all of them. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. But number 1, the mistletoe is a parasite. Let me say that again. The mistletoe is a parasite. Not sure if you guys knew that, right? The mistletoe, right? That plant, that the traditions of the holiday of Christmas, dangle that mistletoe over your head, right? Over someone's head, and then you have to kiss. That mistletoe, that plant is a parasite. It is a parasite.
What?
That plant is a parasite. All right. So mistletoe is an evergreen pest that attaches itself to trees, plants, shrubs, stealing their nutrients and water. This can weaken or disfigure the host plant and eventually kill it. Let me say it again. The mistletoe, right, is an evergreen pest. Let me say that again. The mistletoe is an evergreen pest that attaches itself to the trees, plants, shrubs, stealing their nutrients and water. This can weaken or disfigure the host plant and eventually even kill it. All right. So the mistletoe's main branch comes from the Druids. Let me say that again. The mistletoe. Let me go back here. You see what it means. Now we're going to touch on this, and I'm going to give you scripture as well. So the mistletoe comes from the practice of the mistletoe. The main branch comes from the Druids. It was derived from Babylon, right? It was derived from Babylon. It was supposed to be a representation of the Messiah. In other words, the man branch, the Messiah of their belief system. See, one of the things we have to understand when you see this term Messiah, or the anointed one, that's really what it ultimately means, the anointed one, right? The anointed one. Every culture had a Messiah, someone or something that they selected or chosen or in their belief system recognized as being their anointed one. That's why the Messiah warned his disciples during the time of sorrows and also during the time of the Great Tribulation, that there's going to be what? Others that's going to come in his name, his reputation, Hashem, his reputation, his character, and say that they are the anointed, pretend that they are the Christ, the Mashiach or Mashiach, to say that they are the anointed, say that they are the man, the branch. See, the mistletoe was regarded as a divine branch, a branch that came from heaven and grew upon a tree that sprung out of the earth. The engrafting, right? The engrafting of the celestial branch into the earthly tree, heaven and earth, that sin had severed, were joined together. And thus the mistletoe, main branch, became the token of divine reconciliation to man, the kiss being the well-known token of pardon and reconciliation. So again, this kiss, right? Kissing under the mistletoe, the kiss being the well-known token of pardon and reconciliation. So where did the Druids get this idea from? Where's this idea from? The 85th book of Psalms, chapter 10, verse 11. Mercy and truth, but this has nothing to do with kissing under a branch or anything like that. But we'll see here, mercy and truth are met together. Righteous and peace have kissed each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Right? Give me some biblical connections here of how so many have taken this holy word and incorporated it into their belief systems to justify some of their activities. Because I'm working on a series right now to deal with witchcraft, and it's interesting when we start dealing with Wicca. That's not an old belief system. That belief system was created in the early 1900s. That's a whole nother discussion. So, as the example that I gave yesterday and a couple of examples I gave on Monday, we see how many of these other belief systems will go into and take some of the scriptures and mesh it with their belief system to justify some of the things, the tenets of and foundational things of their belief system. So more facts about the mistletoe. Number 2, the mistletoe is really hard to get rid of. Let me say that again. The mistletoe is really hard to get rid of. Once it infects a tree, mistletoe is difficult to remove. When its seeds sprout, they grow through the bark of trees and into their tissues, extending up and down with the branches. Number 3, the mistletoe is poisonous. Let me say that again. The mistletoe is poisonous. So I really want you guys to think about so far some of the characteristics of the mistletoe, and we're going to apply some of this to some of the additional things that I share with you. So the mistletoe is poisonous. Eating any part of the plant can cause drowsiness, blurred vision, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, weakness, and seizures. And so the symptoms are caused by a poisonous ingredient called phototoxin, which is found in all parts of the plant. So let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2, because remember I said the book of Jeremiah, we could really shut down the entire holiday of Christmas. The entire book of Jeremiah addresses every aspect of Christmas. So let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 20 and 21, and I'm going to show you the mistletoe. For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou sayest, I will not transgress. Right? Now, notice the two parts of this sentence, right? The Most High, rather, is saying to Israel through his prophet, right? From old time. In other words, when they were in Egypt, when they were in captivity, right? They cried into the Most High, and he broke the yoke. He took them out of bondage, right? That's what it's saying here. And burst thy bands, and thou sayest, I will not transgress. In other words, Yah, since you pulled me out, you took me out of this situation, I am going to be faithful to you. How many times have you heard that in church? Matter of fact, some of you guys probably said the same thing. Lord, if you get me out of this situation, I promise I'll never go back again. Lord, if you get me, if you help me with my car, if you help me with my house, if you help me with my son, if you help me with my daughter, if you help me with my spouse, if you help me with my job, if you help me feel better, whatever it may be. How many times have you seen, or you did it yourself, made a commitment, say, hey, if you do this, I promise you I won't do it again. Matter of fact, all of us have done that to our parents. I won't do it no more. You know, you're getting spanked. Actually, we call it the beatings. That's we got beatings back in the day. So here it is. You getting that beating. The first thing you're going to say is, I'm not going to do it anymore. And what do? You do it again. See, this is the overtone of this particular verse. For of old time, I have broken thy yoke. I helped you. I took you out of bondage and burst thy bands. And thou sayest, I will not transgress. Right? Made a commitment. Right? This Ecclesiastes chapter 5 made a verbal commitment. And I encourage you guys to read that chapter, and you will see that the Most High is not as forgiving when you make commitments to do something and you renege on your commitment. He doesn't even tolerate of you being late, delaying honoring your commitment. I call it the foot and mouth scripture. But nevertheless, it says again, for of old times I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou sayest, I will not transgress when upon every high hill. Now pay attention to this part. I will not transgress, but out of the same mouth, guess what? When upon every high hill and under every green tree, thou wanderest playing the harlot. Notice what it says. Upon every high hill, under every green tree. Remember what we taught yesterday. The palm tree and the fir, right? The fir, right? Which we also refer to as, the evergreens, right? That's the origins of the Christmas tree. The Egyptians used palm trees. The Babylonians used palm trees. The Romans used ferns, right? Which we would refer to as these evergreen trees. All comes from the Sumerians, come from the Babylonians, come from the Egyptians. So now let's paint this picture. That's in chapter 10, right? These trees are being set up inside their homes. But before they were setting them up inside their homes, right? These trees, right? Every high hill, right? That's up, elevated, right? Altar, elevated. So under those trees, Israel were playing the harlot. In other words, they were committing sexual prostitution. Some cultures would call it sacred orgies or sacred sexual rituals or, whatever the case may be. But they were prostituting themselves in terms of the priests, the Levites, the priests, and their women. They were giving sexual favors, so to speak, right? Under every high hill. On every high hill, under every green tree, they was under that tree. They was having sexual activities, right? And the goal was, and I didn't go over the equinoxes and all that. Maybe if we have time, I'll touch on that because that's another lesson that in itself, because it's a really large lesson, right? But when you understand the equinox, right, the spring equinox represents the planting of the seed, right? This is where you get the New Year's, right? That is the ancient New Year's was not in January. It was actually the spring equinox was the New Year's for the Egyptians, the Babylonians, right? The Romans, the Greeks, Syrians. You know, I can name over 30 different countries that their New Year's actually began at the spring equinox, right? Israel's New Year's did not begin at the spring equinox. The new moon after the spring equinox is Israel's New Year, the first new moon. But anyway, so the spring equinox, that meant that they were planting these seeds into the ground, right? They was doing these, engaging in these sexual activities, these sexual favors in the spring equinox. Now, when we get to the winter solstice, because you have the spring equinox, you have the autumn equinox, which is like September 22nd. Then you have the summer solstice. Then you have the winter solstice, the summer solstice, June 21st, the winter solstice, December 25th, 24th, 25th, right? Now, why is that significant? Again, remember, the spring equinox represents planting the seed. This winter equinox represents, and it means the birth. So in the spring, they're planting the seed, the spring equinox. 9 months later is the winter solstice. And now we see what? The birth of these different messiahs from these different cultures. This is why the Roman Catholic Church selected this time of the year to supposedly honor the birthday of our Messiah, which up until the 4th century, they didn't have a birthday celebration. There was no birth date that was actually set aside for the Messiah. So I just want to give you more of a backdrop to understand the significance of this text right here. So they were under these trees on these high hills, these altars, natural altars. They was engaging into all kinds of prostitution because it said they played the harlot. Now, when you get to Jeremiah chapter 10, now instead of going to these trees under every high hill, they were chopping these trees down, the groves down, chopping these trees down and taking these trees and placing it inside their homes. Now, the gifts that's underneath the tree is the sexual activities. That's where you get the gifts from, the gifts under the tree. See, this all connects to that. See, this is why we have to get out of the process of trying to read our text, study the scriptures from a perspective of trying to what? Get a bullet point, trying to get a talking point to argue with someone. No, if you read the text, fully study the text, you will understand that it's more to it. It's so many nuggets inside there. So by the time you get to Jeremiah chapter 10, now Israel, instead of having these trees on the outside, now they bring in these palm trees. That's what it says inside the scriptures, these palm trees inside their homes. And remember, the palm trees, Baal Tamar, right? We dealt on that, Baal Peor, when we're dealing with what? The Lord of the palm. So they're bringing these trees now from off these high hills, cutting them down off these high hills, now bringing it into their homes. And now they're doing these activities underneath that tree. This is where you get the gifts underneath the tree. All right. So verse 21, yet I had planted thee a noble vine. This is dealing with the northern and southern kingdom. Yet I had planted thee a noble vine, holy, a right seed. How then art thou turned into what? A degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me. Let me read that again. Israel, we need to wake up, because there's all kinds of mysticisms. We could talk about the church. We could talk about the Catholic Church. We could talk about Christianity. But so many of our brothers and sisters walked out of that, left that, and diving right smack into mysticism. You'd be surprised some of the things I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Mysticism, sages and all kinds, burning sage and crystals and, chakras and, all kinds of things that they are indulging in, thinking that the Most High approve of those things. Yet I had planted thee a noble vine, holy, a right seed. How then art thou turned into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me? Now Israel is referred to as what? A degenerate plant. Because of what? All the things they began to engage in. They began to serve other deities. This is what they're doing here. Chapter 7, you'll see that they're, we'll get to that. Actually, I'm not even going to get ahead of myself. All right. But Israel they've fallen away again. After all what the Most High has done, they managed to go against them again. So under every green tree, Israel played the harlot. And I already explained it, but let me explain it again. See, the people were like prostitutes who refused the yoke and restrictions of Yah's commandments. We see that happening today, especially Christianity is promoting this. They refused to obey Yah's law that prohibited idolatry and sexual immorality. When the people turned to false gods, they were unfaithful to Yah. They committed spiritual adultery against him. See, spiritual adultery is they began to enter into other covenants. They began to enter into covenants with other belief systems. And so many are using mysticism to do so. Y'all hear these things, these different excuses. Hey, you can't get everything from the Bible. Oh, the Bible, it's an esoteric text. It's filled with symbolisms. We got to get into the metaphysical. You got all kinds of stuff, all kinds of doctrines out here that's trying to do what? Add or try to give people an alternative route. Let me make it clear. Hasatan is not an alternative to the Most High. Good is not an alternative to evil. That means that they're equal. No, they're not equal, right? Hasatan has some power, but the Most High has all power. The angels have some power, but the Most High have all power, right? The president of the United States, which is supposed to be one of the most powerful positions in the world. It's a very powerful position, but it's still some power. The Most High has all power. So again, the people are like prostitutes who refuse the yoke and restrictions of Yah's commandments. They refuse to obey Yah's laws that prohibited idolatry and sexual immorality. When the people turned to false gods or false deities, they were unfaithful to Yah. They committed spiritual adultery. In other words, entering into covenants with other deities, other belief systems against him. They forsook Yah and gave themselves over to the worship of these false deities. And so the Israelites even constructed altars and worship sites on every high hill and under every huge tree along the roadways throughout the nations. So fertility rites, in other words, phallic worship, were usually practiced at these altars, right? So think about the time of the Maccabees. This is what Antiochus was pushing, for them to eat swine, do all the things, falling right up in alignment with should I say phallic worship, trying to get Israel to what? Get into phallic worship. See, family, you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful who you connect yourself with, right? You have to be careful, because a lot of people, they just trying to find out what is the thing that may be a device to you, so that way they can make it a point to try to attack that weakness, that area that you may have a struggle in. That's the whole goal. That's the whole goal of so many people. So you have to be careful who you share your personal business with. Because with social media, everyone, not everyone, but the majority wants to put people on blast, want to have things that they could put out there on their platforms, hoping that they could go viral, go on to TikTok now. So be careful how you share your personal information, even on these dangerous YouTube and Facebook streets. So Yah gave themselves over. So Israel gave themselves over to the worship of false deities, right? The Israelites even constructed altars, worship sites on every high hill and under every huge tree along the roadways. Throughout the nation, fertility rites, in other words, phallic worship, were usually practiced at these altars, which means that the priests and priestess, the women, right? Because the holy men of the Most High was called Quadash, right? The priests, the women, right? They were referred to as Quadashah, right? The priest, Quadash, the priestess, Quadashah. That's a whole nother discussion, right? When you see holy, Quadash, from a masculine perspective, Quadash. From a feminine perspective, Quadashah. Now, when we deal with Israel as a whole, when we deal with both man and female, you will see Quadash for Israel as a whole, for the people of the Most High being recognized as Quadash. But here, Quadash and Quadashah. At these sites, and you can look it up, right? But anyway, at these sites were religious prostitutes. They were available for the worshiper, seeking a fruit harvest through the act of sex, which symbolized the bringing forth of life, production, and fruitfulness. So our people were engaging in these sexual activities, trying to encourage or ensure that they were going to have a good harvest, right? It was doing this to ensure that they would have a good harvest. So again, they were available for the worshipers seeking a fruitful harvest through the act of sex, which symbolized the bringing forth of life, production, and fruitfulness. So Israel turned into a degenerate plant of a strange vine. But who is the true vine? Who is the true vine? See, so many of these different belief systems, they have an anti, always something something that's the opposite of what our Dabar HaQuadash teaches, our holy word. This is why we have to be careful, even when we're dealing with translations and transliterations. It's always good to make it a point to try to get to the ancient text, the original text, that at least when you're trying to define some of these key words. So, biblical foundation, John chapter 15, verse 1 and 2, and also verse 5. I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purge it, that it may bring forth more fruit. So we see the Messiah saying that he is what? The true vine. But when you connect yourself to, a strange vine, now you're going to become a degenerate plant. When you start chasing these other anointings, these false messiahs, that's trying to disguise and mask their deceptions by trying to come in the authority of the true Messiah, our Hamashiach, the Son of the Most High. Guess what? You're going to become a degenerate plant connected to what? A strange vine, a foreign vine, something that the Most High will not recognize. All right. So every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth fruit, much fruit. For without me, ye can do nothing. So guess what? When you are a parasite, when you are a mistletoe, you are a parasite. You're trying to hack. You're trying to leech. You're trying to the point that you are disrupting the actual vine. So that's why you become what? A degenerate plant. Why? Because now you're producing what? You're connecting, trying to be connected and bring or produce or grow, bring forth fruit from a strange vine. Anyway, so the Hebrew definition of abide, this is what we have to understand. Abide. Abide means to sit down. You know, many of our people have a problem with sitting down, right? Some of our people have a problem with dwelling. In other words, to remain, to stay in a particular place, inhabit, make to inhabit, right? So, inhabitant. So who is the true vine? As I pointed out, we already gave you the answer, the Messiah. But let's deal with the tree of life. Who is the tree of life? Because we dealt with the strange or the degenerate plant that's connected to a strange vine. Again, a lot of our brothers and sisters are connected to a what? Strange vine. Became a degenerate plant, now connected to a strange vine. But hey, wait a minute. Does that connect to the grafted in? Does that connect to when we start dealing with the two sticks? Is that connected to the two branches? Is that connected to? I'm going to do that lesson called the two witnesses. I thought I did it. I did it internally, but I thought I recorded it. But I'm going to do the lesson on the two witnesses, and we're going to go really delve into that, and we're going to reveal the answer of who's the two witnesses. But let's deal with the tree of life. Genesis chapter 2, verse 9. And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge, good and evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So let's go to Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. Just giving you some additional sources or scriptures. Verse 9, you guys remember this. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Judeans, Yahweh, Yehudi, and are not, but are the synagogue, in other words, the mashkan of Hasatan, Satan. I know thy works, tribulations, and poverty, but thou art rich. I know the blasphemies, na'atizah or na'at, in other words, profane. I know the blasphemy of them which say that they are Judah, and they are not. We have a lot of people professing to be Judah, but the true Judah are the ones that's getting all the what? Opposition. As we laid out with the times of sorrow and the great tribulation, it's only one group of people that had to deal with lynching, being hung on a tree. And the reason why the United States and many of these other countries have a judgment that's going to come, because if you understand the law, statutes, and commandments, right? In Deuteronomy, it talks about curse is the man that's hung on a tree, or the person that's hung on a tree, because they are supposed to take that tree down before it gets dark. Once that evening kick in, once it gets into that next day, guess what? Now they curse the entire land. That's why the Israelites were pressed to get the Messiah down before the evening, because it would have transitioned into another day and they would have cursed the entire land. So the reason why we're seeing a lot of the things that are happening right now, because they are judgments, because so many of our ancestors were hung on trees, left on trees, tortured, beaten, all kinds of things. You guys see some of the images here, but anyway, let's get back into it. Revelation chapter 7, verse 14. And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of the great tribulation. These are they that came out of the great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. John chapter 10, verse 10. And we're going to get to our next thought here. The thief cometh. And this is a good thought here because we want to get into some characteristics of how they tried to make Santa Claus into a Messiah. And I'm going to show you, especially when we deal with the destruction, right? The declaration of war tomorrow. We're going to see who truly Santa Claus is, who Saint Nicholas is. So the thief cometh not but to steal, kill, and destroy. But I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. So every Christmas tree represents an altar. Let me say it again. Every Christmas tree represents an altar. Every Christmas tree is a reminder of temple prostitution. Every Christmas tree is a reminder of phallic worship. Baal Tamar, and also Baal Peor. We also touched on Baal Berit, right, which is the Lord of the Covenant. Canaanite deities. So every Christmas tree represents an altar. The Hebrew word for altar is ma-zabak, right, which comes from the primitive root word zabak, which means to slaughter. So in Jeremiah 2, Israel performed sexual rituals on every high hill and under every green tree. So when we get to Jeremiah 10, Israel performed sexual rituals on under every green tree in their homes. Excuse the typo. So by the time we get to Jeremiah 10, Israel performs these same sexual rituals under every green tree that they put up in their homes. So every high hills that had a green tree on it was that's rooted on it was used as an altar for sexual prostitution. And so who is this altar? Who are these altars built to? Who are these altars built to and paying homage to? The Queen of Heaven. The Queen of Heaven, the groves, Astarte. So Queen of Heaven, the spirit of manipulation. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 18:21 to build this up. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh. Now, some of you guys will say Elohim. It's not a deal breaker. We're not getting into all the semantics tonight. So again, notice what it says. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech. This dealing with child sacrifices. Neither shalt thou profane the name, Hashem, Sham, the reputation of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh. Right? So with that being said, let's deal with child sacrifices. Let's deal with that. Going back to this text here, let's deal with seeds passed through the fire to Molech. Let's break that down, right? The man branch, the Yule log. So when you think about that Yule log inside that fireplace, guess what? That is dealing with child sacrifice. Now, some of you guys probably remember when you were kids. I remember my grandmother, she'll have the television on, and guess what? She'll be cooking and everything, and she'll have what? Turn to channel 11, because I'm from North New Jersey. So they had either channel 11, right? That's normally what she'll have it on, or channel 7. They had the Yule log burning what? All night. But little did my grandmother know, little did most of you guys watching really understood what that Yule log represents. And I'm going to show you that Yule log is child sacrifice. That log represents a child, right? Yule, that's a Chaldean word for child. And it's in the fire. So you see the symbolism of child sacrifices every time you see the Yule log burning on your television. A farther confirmation and illustration of these facts is found in the custom of the Christmas Yule log. The word Yule is the Chaldee term for an infant or little child, and hence it was that Christmas day was called among the heathens Yule Day or the Child's Day. And the night before Christmas, right, they called that Mother Night. The night before Christmas, they called it Mother Night. Let's do this again. A farther confirmation and illustration of these facts is found in the customs of the Christmas Yule log. The word Yule is the Chaldean term for an infant or little child, and hence it was that Christmas day was called among heathens Yule Day or the Child's Day, and the night before Christmas, Mother Night, right? Or ages before the birth of Christ. And this entirely accounts for the putting of the Yule log into the fire on Christmas Eve, right? Mother Night, putting the Yule log into what? The fire on Christmas what? Eve. And the appearance of the Christmas tree the next morning. So as 0, right? 0, that's seed. 0, ashta, in other words, the seed of the woman. That's what it means. 0 in ancient Hebrew is zara, right? 0, ashta, which means the seed of the woman, which name also signifies ignagena, or born of the fire. He has to enter the fire on the Mother Night that he may be born the next day out of it as the branch of their God, or the tree that brings all divine gifts to the men. But why, it may be asked, does he enter the fire under the symbol of the log? To understand this, it must be remembered, and we'll get into that more. So again, as the branch of God, that, you know, that's what it's supposed to be when it's born, when it comes out of that fire on Christmas, it's supposed to represent what? The branch of their God, or the tree that brings all divine gifts to men, right? Dealing with the harvest, right? Why does he have to, enter into the fire under the symbol of the log? Why does it? Why, what's the answer here? I'm going to share with you. Yule log, the child day, which is the worship of the serpent. Now, this question right here, I know, excuse my typos, but why does this child, right, have to enter into the fire under the symbol of a log? And this is in Jeremiah too. We're going to deal with that, right? So the Yule log, the child day, the worship of the serpent. This is what we're going to get into. So remember what I pointed out, and I'm going to reiterate this again. The word Yule is the Chaldee term for an infant or little child, and hence it was the Christmas day was called among the heathens Yule Day or Child's Day, and the night before Christmas, Mother Night, for the ages before the birth of Christ. All right. So let's go to our next exhibit, right? And we'll, I thought I had my whole lesson here. I thought I had some additional information here, but don't worry about it, family. We'll make sure we pick whatever I missed out. I'll make sure I make it up before we wrap up, not tonight, but the entire series. So let's go to exhibit F. Right. So far, if you guys agree, when we deal with after presenting exhibit E, dealing with the mistletoe, so far, what do you guys think? Guilty or innocent? Guilty or innocent, or guilty, or you just need more information to come to a conclusion, to form an opinion. So just type in guilty if you believe so far your verdict is guilty, or if you still need more information, type in more information or not guilty. All right. So let's deal with the next piece of evidence. Let's go to exhibit F. Has Santa Claus replaced Yah? November 1934, John Frederick Coots in Haven, Gillespie. Santa Claus is coming to town. They wrote that song. Santa Claus is coming to town. What's the message behind that? What does it really mean? Right? You better watch out. You better not cry. Better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Right? Let me read that again. What's the origin of this? You better watch out. You better not cry. Better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. And even thinking about this, right? And I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but I found out that the church, First African Baptist Church, changed and corrected their mistake of stating that there was Arabic on the pews. And they put it back to what it originally said. And they went even more, they gave more details on it, right? But guess what? I have not talked about it. Have not brought it up. Haven't been talking about, haven't dealt with it, right? Not going to deal with it. Why? Because, we're dealing with something else. And that's something that's part of all of our heritage. But you know what? The very ones that love this Christmas tree, that love Santa Claus, that teaches Santa Claus, guess what? They're not obeying Santa Claus. You better watch out. You better not cry. Better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. And guess what? Brothers and sisters, those that are worshiping and idolizing Christmas, right? There's a lot of brothers, a lot of people within Christianity and other groups. They are pouting right now. They are crying right now. They are, behaving in a way that's just very unproductive. All because the Church of Savannah corrected the error and put it back to the original writings of saying, making it clear that there's Hebrew, that is Hebrew on the pews. But guess what? Let me just give you a little clip of what all this crying when we deal with pouting. This is my thought. This is what puts me in the mind when I'm hearing all the crying. This is how they're behaving. I haven't said anything about it. Why? Because I don't look at the pews being changed back to his original text as a sign of victory. I'm not spiking the ball or anything like that. I haven't talked about it. My cousin haven't talked about it. None of us have talked about it. But guess what? All of a sudden, you see a lot of pouting going on right now. A lot of crying that's going on right now, right? I'll show it one more time. And let me just show you what the Godfather handled someone that was crying. And then we'll continue on. All right, family. So with that being said, let's continue. All right. Let's deal with this song right here. All right. Let's deal with this song right here. Just thought I mentioned that now that we at this portion of the lesson dealing with pouting, you better watch out. You better not cry. Better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa, right? You mix these words around, you get Satan, right? But Santa Claus is coming to town. You better watch out. You better not pout. Let's go to Numbers chapter 14, verse 26 and 27. And Yahweh spake unto Moses and unto Aharon, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation? Ra'ah, congregation. Idah, which murmur against me. I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me. Pouting, right? Hebrew definition of murmur. I'm not going to break this down, but just want to keep it simple here. Don't want to add more time to it, but the presentation tonight. But murmur means to stop, right? You guys have seen children have temper tantrums in front of their parents outside. especially in the supermarket. They fall on the floor. Why are they falling out on the floor? Because they are what? Murmuring. They're stopping their progressions. They're not moving. They're making it, they're rebelling, saying, hey, they're stopping. They're going to stay permanently where they are, to be obstinate, grudge. See, Israel, when the Most High was moving them forward, they started murmuring, right? Complaining about the challenges that they had to deal with. And so they began to murmur, tell the Most High that they're stopping. They're not going any further. They're not going into the promised land. They're going to stay where they are permanently or go back to Egypt. That's what murmuring. When you murmur, you're telling the Most High that you're no longer going to progress. You're no longer going to push forward. You want to stay where you are or go backwards. All right. So the etymology dictionary definition of murmur, just go a little deeper with it. Expression of popular discontent or complaint by what? Grumbling. Let me say it again. Expression of discontent, popular, right? Because Israel, we're dealing with the masses. Only a couple of people said we can go and take this land. That's Caleb and Joshua. But you see majority of Israel, they started what? Murmuring. So expression of popular, in other words, popular discontent or complaint by grumbling. So let's go to Matthew chapter 12, verse 36. But I say unto you that every idle word, right? We have to learn, family, we better learn how to talk to one another. Social media has changed and completely caused us to forget how we're supposed to communicate with each other. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. Let me say it one more time. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. So there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be very disappointed on that day of judgment because they allowed the spirit of social media have them behaving and getting outside of the characteristics, the attributes of the Holy Spirit. Let's continue. He knows when you are sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. Now, what does this mean? He knows if you've been bad or good. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see what? Your good works. Wait a minute. You see, in the church we teach, they teach that works are no good. It's all about grace. But the Messiah is saying, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is where? In heaven. So is Santa all seeing, all knowing, and can be everywhere at the same time? That's the question. Let's go to Job chapter 1, verse 7, because we know the Most High is, but Santa Claus, he's on a sleigh, but they given the impression that Santa Claus can be everywhere and see you everywhere and what? See whether you being good or bad, right? Santa Claus is, he's everywhere, omnipresent, right? Omniscient. Verse 7 of chapter 1, and Yahweh said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Santa, right? Then Santa answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth, from walking up and down. So Satan, right, can't be at two places at one time. A lot of this stuff, many are blaming on Hasatan. He's not even there. One of the other angels, remember, a third of the angels got cast down. Hasatan was so smooth with his deception, he convinced a third of heaven that actually seen the actual appearance of the Most High, caused them to walk away from it, the presence of the Most High, rebel. So when Yahweh said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and walking down in it. So he cannot be at two places at one time. Okay. And here Satan gave the name of the Most High in this text. So there's a lot of agents of Satan, of Hasatan, that's carrying this Bible or carrying this holy word. They are nothing more than what? Agents of Satan. They know the reputation of the Most High, the literal name of the Most High, but they're still what? Going to and from with their deception, looking for what? Someone to what? Devour, right? So why does Santa Claus come down the chimney at night? All right. Why does Santa Claus come down the chimney at night? Why? Why, family? Why he come down the chimney at night? And I'm going to show you where they got it from. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 7. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahweh so cometh as a what? Thief in the night. Right? No one knows when a thief is coming. That's why you have alarms. Because if you had a schedule when a thief is coming to your house, guess what? You'll have you wouldn't even need an alarm. You'll be there for that day and make sure that day and time you're there to handle that thief. But the Most High is that day when he comes back, with the day that the Messiah returns. Guess what? Even the Messiah said he doesn't know. That's in the hands of the Father. So when the Most High come back, when the angels are dispatched to the four corners of this earth to gather all the people of the Most High, the true blood descendants of Israel, right? That's when the Messiah is going to come. He's going to bring us all together. But anyway, Matthew 12, verse 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Even the Messiah said he don't know, he does not know when the Most High is going to have him return. That's in the hands of the Father. But we know that's the appointed day after what? All things that need to be fulfilled is going to be fulfilled when the Most High is going to say it's time. But notice what he said. Let me read it again. For those that think that the Messiah knows when he's coming back, notice what he says. Let me read it to you again, right? It says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. These are the words of the Messiah saying that only the Father knows. That doesn't minimize the importance of the Messiah. That doesn't devalue him because only the Father knows when he's going to return. He said this a number of times, right? Let's give the three-piece for those that are trying to make the Father and his Son the same. They are one, heis or akkad, meaning they are on one accord. But there's a distinction. Even the Messiah made a distinction right here. In John chapter 14, he also makes a distinction between the Father, he, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the Most High. All right. So let's continue. Who was or is Santa Claus? Who is Santa Claus? Is he Saint Nicholas? Saint Nicholas, right? I want to make sure that you guys understand. I'm getting ready to give you some detailed information about Santa Claus, the origin, the history of Saint Nick, right? Let's go into it. Saint Nicholas also inherited the Poseidon's popular title, the Sailor. We're dealing with Nicholas now, right? Yesterday, I introduced you guys to the word Nicolaitans, and we're going to continue on with that destructive doctrine, right? This is the original image of Santa Claus right here, Odin, right? Sorrows, Odin, Saint Nicholas, a bogus saint evolved from the pagan sea god. See, have you ever noticed that every celebration that the United States and actually the entire world through the church, the Roman Catholic Church, every one of these holidays, they have a saint. Saint Valentine's, Saint Patrick, all these fabricated saints. And you guys remember the teaching I did on Valentine's Day, giving clarity that that's a fabricated saint. The Saint Patrick's fabricated. Not true. The actual people that the Irish killed, genocide. This is a story of genocide of the Twa people. That's a whole nother discussion. We'll deal with that when we get there. So Saint Nicholas, a bogus saint, evolved from the pagan sea god who replaced Artemis, right? Remember Artemis. This is also getting into the worship of Diane, of Themyscira, right? Wonder Woman. That's who we're dealing with. So Saint Nicholas, a bogus saint who evolved from the pagan sea god or deity who replaced Artemis as patron of sailors and harlots. Temples of Poseidon became shrines of Saint Nicholas, who also inherited the Poseidon's popular title, the Sailor. Nicholas, his Christian name was the name as Old Nick or Hold Nickar, which is the Teutonic sea god known as the king of the Nixies. In other words, sea nymphs. And we start dealing with death when we start really getting into all of that, right? We also get into perversions. That's a whole nother discussion. Nymphs. So Nicholas was also equated with Woden, as European pagan deities were Christianized, right? This is getting into syncretism, that word that I introduced to the community earlier this year, syncretism. That's why we see all what we see with the Catholic Church, Christianity, all through syncretism, embracing other cultures to enlarge in their agenda. Catholic, universal, right? Universal, interchangeable, generic, general, gene, right? Universal, the doctrine of who? Universe, the Etruscan triple goddess. This is where you get the Trinity from. The triune. Anyway, you guys trying to make me go geek mode. I'm not doing that. So again, Nicholas, his Christian name was the same as Old Nick or Hold Nickar, who is the Teutonic sea god known as King of the Nixies. In other words, sea nymphs. Nicholas was also equated to Woden. As European pagan deities were Christianized, the benevolent aspect of Woden became Saint Nicholas, in other words, Santa Claus, who galloped over housetops during the winter solstice, as the elder god did, granting boons to his worshipers below the winter solstice. We talked about that, but we'll deal with that another time. In Italy, Saint Nicholas supplanted a female boon-giving deity called the grandmother, or Pasqua Epiphania, or Befana, who used to fill the children's stockings with her gifts. The grandmother was ousted from her shrine at Bari, which became the center of St. Nicholas' cult. The Nicolaitans, we could connect that to. Christian sailors carried, and also we could deal with Nikes, right? Nike, right? Christians sailors carried the saint's image out to sea on his feast day. What I say, on his feast day, as pagan sailors formerly carried the image of the sea god or goddess. Some bones were collected in the 11th century AD, installed in a church built at Bari to house them, and labeled the bones of Saint Nicholas, right? Labeled them the bones of Saint Nicholas. So is this the real beginning of Saint Nicholas cult? Is this the very beginning of Saint Nicholas? We got a lot to unwrap here, unpackage. But notice this. The Roman Catholics claim that he had been a bishop of Myra in the 4th century. I'm telling you, they would do anything, to justify whatever pagan rituals or what they call holidays. All right. So the Roman Catholics claims that he had been a bishop of Myra in the 4th century, which is an absolute lie. Saint Nicholas' official biography was and is completely fabricated. I'm going to show you here. His entire biography is completely fabricated. So let's deal with the far-reaching lies of Saint Nicholas. You guys ready for this? Let's deal with the far-reaching lies. Now, I may add a little humor to it because when I think about this portion of it that I'm going to share with you, I think about the most interesting man alive. You guys saw that commercial, the music behind it. Like I said, he had a bad day, and he had a bad day just to see how it feels. The most interesting man alive. Think about that music when I share with you some of these far-reaching lies of Saint Nicholas, who did not exist, this Nicholas that they're trying to build up. But I'm going to give you the true Nicholas, not today, but we'll do that in part 4. So this is the far-reaching lies of Saint Nicholas, right? Santa Claus. Notice this, right? As an infant, you cannot make this stuff up, guys. I'm trying not to laugh, but notice what it says. As an infant, he fasted, taking his mother's breast milk only once on Wednesdays and Fridays.
What?
Let me say it again. As an infant, right? Saint Nicholas, supposedly, as a baby, breastfeeding, taking only his mother's breast milk only on once on Wednesday and once on Friday.
What?
You cannot make this stuff up. Here's another far-reaching lie. He became a bishop on account of his predecessor's prophetic dream because he was the first man to enter the church the next day. Oh my God, you can't make this up. He became a bishop on the account of his predecessor's prophetic dream because he was the first man to enter the church the next day. And I'm trying to figure out what's the miraculous, thing about that. He resurrected the dead from a magic metal pot that had a cover on it. Oh my goodness. I want y'all to pay attention to this. Let me read it one more time. Can't make this up, guys. He resurrected the dead from a magic metal pot that had a cover on it.
What?
Fables, right? The very things that Paul warned about getting caught up in, fables. All right. The most interesting man alive, the most fabricated, the over-the-top things that they teach about this guy. He stopped a violent storm at sea to save 3 drowning sailors. He miraculously multiplied a shipment of grain to feed a whole diocese for 2 years with enough seed left over for future crops. After his death, he supposedly achieved even greater feats. His bones exuded a fountain of oil that could cure every disease, right? So that's Nicholas. That's the far-reaching lies of Saint Nicholas, right? That Saint Nicholas that the Catholic Church created. Right? That's what they created. All right. So the pagan god Nicholas, right? So the pagan deity, right? And when we deal with Nicholas, if we say God, that's dealing with the Norse. God, Gater is the plurality of their gods, right? Gater Damarung is the place where the gods are laid to rest, dead gods or their dead deities, right? Our Most High is not referred to as God or Gater, but that's a whole nother discussion. So the pagan deity Nicholas gave rise to a Gnostic group called the Nicolaitans. Let me say that again. The pagan worshippers of Nicholas, right, gave rise to a Gnostic group called the Nicolaitans. The Nicolaitans, as I highlighted every day of this week, the Nicolaitans can be found and confirmed in the scriptures. Let's go back here again. Revelation chapter 2, verse 14 and 15. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel to eat things sacrificed unto idols. I encourage those that that may not have seen episode 1 to go to episode 1. Right? We dealt with swine. And to commit fornication. So has thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. Right? Nicolaitans, their name is what? It means what? The destruction of people. So they have the doctrine. They have their whole agenda is what? To destroy the people, especially the people of the Most High. They worship the pagan god Nicholas or deity Nicholas with strong emotions of regeneration as a fertility figure. They held that the only way to salvation lay through frequent intercourses between the sexes. You see how we're dealing with perversions again? You see how we're dealing with perversions? Sexual perversions? Like other worshipers of the sexual fertility pagan principle, the Nicolaitans were suppressed. Sexual symbols, right? Symbolisms persisted in the sigil of St. Nicholas Day, or sigil, excuse me, of St. Nicholas Day and the runic almanac, a furka combined with a yonic mandoro. Can't make this up, family. So in ancient Egypt, this was a sign of a phallus of Set, the goddess Set, in conjunction with the goddess genital oval. I'm just trying to keep it clean, right? When we study Hinduism, you have what is called the Ligam Yani, which is what? A image of sexual sexual or temple prostitution or sexual rituals, orgies. So another symbol of St. Nicholas was the cluster of 3 golden balls adopted as the crest of the Medici family, which later as a sign of pawnbrokers. All right, just giving you. I know I'm going to little geek mode here, but that's who I am. That's what I do. I'm a geek. So the Dutch called Saint Nicholas Sint Claus. Martin Luther added to this deception. You know, you have so many other reformers, right? They love to talk about Martin Luther. They love to talk about, John Calvin and all that other stuff. When we start dealing with Calvinism and, that whole Reformation movement. But Luther wanted a Protestant alternative to the Roman Catholic practice of celebrating the feast of St. Nicholas. In other words, Santa Claus. Instead of giving gifts in the name of Santa Claus on December 6th, Luther, notice what I said, on December 6th, Luther started the tradition of giving gifts in the name of Kris Kringle on Christmas Eve, Mother Night. So Luther's Kris Kringle is actually called Christ of the Wheel. So this is the title of the Norse year deity or God, because that term God is a Norse term, right? The Norse God at the winter solstice, which we deal with Christmas, as the sun god born again. You see what I'm going at with this? The deities being what? Born again. That's what the winter solstice represents. What these gods or from the Norse, these deities and other belief systems, their messiahs and all that being what? Born again, birthed, rebirthed, right? Reborn at the winter solstice, which is generally between December 25th to, I believe, January 1st or whatever, or December 22nd to January 1st. But anyway, this is the title of the Norse year god, year deity at the the winter solstice, in other words, Christmas, as the sun god born again. His title seemed to have been applied to a sacrificial victim on a fiery wheel. So again, what's the doctrines of the Nicolaitans? Replacement theology is one of their doctrines. Let me say this again. The doctrines of these Nicolaitans or Nicolaitans is replacement theology. Anytime someone is saying that physical Israel doesn't matter, it's all about spiritual Israel, that's replacement theology. Anytime they're even trying to replace the actual Messiah, replacement theology, replacement of the Father, replacement theology, replacing the Holy Spirit, replacement theology, replacing the true Israelites, replacement theology, replacing the true covenant, replacement theology. Theo, God, right? Ology, study. So replacement theology, the study of using the Most High as deceptively using the Most High to replace Israel. Right? So Santa Claus is the man-made face of replacement theology. Let me say that again. Santa Claus is the man-made face of replacement theology. So who is Santa Claus replacing? Who is Santa Claus replacing? I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but we're going to continue. The replacement of Yahweh, the replacement of the Hebrew Israelite Messiah, the replacement of the Holy Spirit, the replacement of Israel, the replacement of our hope, which leads me to Exhibit G. Let's go to the next exhibit. What is Christmas? Let's start with the etymology word of Christmas. We're getting close to the end, family. I know we're getting close to our 2-hour cap here, but want to keep it within 2 hours so that way, you guys have enough time to go back over it. And I'm loading this up with information so you have a lot to pull from each lesson. All right. So what is Christmas? Notice what it says here. We're going to just deal with the etymology dictionary. Church festival observed annually in memory of the birth of Christ. Right. You see that it says Christi's Massey, right? Old English, but it says from Christ. In other words, retaining the original vowel sound or whatever, but Christ, right? But it says here, basically, Christmas is Christ plus Mass. And it tells you to look at the noun, entry number 2. But nevertheless, you see here, Christ plus Mass. Christmas, Christ plus Mass. So Christmas equals Christ plus Mass. Let's define Christ, which all you guys should know, but we're going to just for the sake of walking this thing out, not going to make any assumptions for those that may be coming into this truth brand new. So Christ, anointed, Christos, right? Simply means what? The anointed. But as you see here, synonymous with and translating to Greek Hebrew Mashiach. In other words, Messiah. It tells you to see Messiah, a title given to Jesus of Nazareth. All right. So again, Christ simply means the anointed, the Hebrew version of this word. And that's a whole nother discussion. I encourage you guys to look at, I believe it's episode 3, Words of Confusion, when I deal with the Messiah and I deal with deliverers. And I go into this in detail. But nevertheless, Christ means what? The anointed. As you see here, the Greek Christos. All right. So Christ, and I want to say this, and I'm not trying to mock anyone, but Christ is not the Messiah's last name, right? That just tells you that he's anointed and gives you more clarity on his purpose. So Christ is not a last name. So Mass, it told us to look at, remember, let's go back here. So to make sure those that are watching, They don't get the idea of trying to suggest that I'm playing on words. Notice here, it tells us for mass, see the noun to. Mass, noun to understand these two words coming together, Chris or Christ mass. So let's go back here, fast forward. Mass, noun number 2, the second entry. Notice what we see. Eucharistic service, dismissal, right? To let go, send, go. It is the dismissal, right? So now let's see what dismissal means. So we see mass means dismissal. So the Eucharistic service is celebrating what? The dismissal. To let go, send, go. It is the dismissal. So the etymology dictionary definition of dismissal, it says here, remove from office. Wait a minute. So when many are celebrating Christmas or the anointed, what you're saying that you are celebrating that the true anointed was removed from his position, service, or employment. But then when we go to the additional entries here, it says send away, send different ways, break up, discharge, renounce, abandon. That's what you're celebrating when you say, not when you guys that are watching, but those that are saying Merry Christmas. They're saying that they're happy that the Messiah was removed, that he was dismissed, that he's unemployed, that he was sent away, that he was broken up, that he was abandoned. So the prophecy, right, that the Messiah had given, let's about dismissal. Let's see here, Mark chapter 13, verse 22. For false messiahs, false Christos, false anointed people, false Christ, notice what it says here, false Christ and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. And the elect is dealing with who? Israel. That's the elect. It's dealing with the blood descendants of Israel, not some spiritual Israel. It's dealing with the blood descendants of Israel. So false messiahs, false anointed people, right? Because you see inside the church, especially when you're dealing with the apostolic church, when you're dealing with the Catholic, not Catholic, but Kojic and some of these other Pentecostal assemblies, man, they quick to throw around anointed. Matter of fact, in non-denominations, right? You see TD Jakes, the anointing. You see Creflo Dollar, the anointing. This is why people are purchasing all kinds of product, the anointed soap, the anointed towel, making even water, all kinds of things to try to what? Seduce the people, get money out of them. Right? So false Christ and false prophets shall rise and shall show what? Show signs, right? And wonders. They're going to show, they're going to have the appearance that they're doing great miracles, great things, signs, proof, evidence. That's what it means in Hebrew. And wonders to what? Seduce. To seduce. That's the whole agenda. If it were possible, even the elect, Israel will be fooled. So why Christmas is in December? Why? Let's go to our next exhibit. Exhibit H. Matthew chapter 23, verse 9. Let's go to the next exhibit. Right? I'm giving you a lot of information, but still we're dealing with what? That degenerate plant that's connected to what? Strange vines. Roman Catholicism, strange vine. Christianity, strange vine. Islam, strange vine. Judaism, strange vine. These are all the different, and there's more that I can name. Hinduism, I can name more. Mysticism, right? Which is a mesh of all these different mystical systems like the Kabbalah. Still Hinduism, Christian mysticism, right? You know, people running around with this Christ conscious craziness, right? All kinds of things that has caused Israel to become what? A degenerate plant that is connected to what? A strange vine, chasing after other anointed, so-called anointed ones. So Matthew chapter 23, verse 9, and call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. Now we're going to give clarity here, and we're going to wrap it up with these final thoughts here. Because when we start understanding, especially when you start getting into full the Baptist or full gospel, you know, when you start getting into the full gospel and all of that, you start really dealing with sonship, the doctrine of sonship, right? The foundation of that doctrine is to teach that everyone, especially when we deal with our community, are what? Orphans. And so they need a what? Father. They need someone to provide a what? Covering for them. Read Malachi chapter 2, and you see how Judah was abusing, doing all kinds of crazy things, and was what? Hiding their abuse through what? Their covering. Anyway, and call no man father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. Call no man father. That's what it says. Call no man on earth father. The Greek definition of father, right? Pater, which means what? Father, parent. And we see here in the sub entry 2 here under A, one who has infused his own spirit into others. Let me say this again. This is what you need to really understand when people are trying to call themselves Father, right? When they're trying to take on that, you know, that title, right? When they try to take on that title, what they are doing is trying to infuse their attributes, trying to infuse their spirit onto others, or should we say into others. That's what it means. And this is what the scripture, the text is warning us about. Is this a contradiction? Because the Most High, through his son, said, call no man father. So is this a contradiction that I bring up here? Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, because this is a law. Honor thy what? Father and thy mother. This is the correct pronunciation, not mother and thy father. The correct order is father and thy mother. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee. So we have to honor our father and we have to honor our mother. But is this a contradiction? Call no man on the earth father, but honor your father. Is that a contradiction? We're going to explain it, and I'm going to show you why that's there. In a nutshell, we're not supposed to put anyone on a pedestal. We're not supposed to give anyone, the authority as if they have the authority of the Most High. Having someone trying to put their spirit, trying to put their attributes on you. See, that's what you see happening a lot in, I'm not saying every assembly, but most assemblies inside the church. Many of the ministers and elders are striving to do what? Get the what? Spirit, the attributes of their leader, not of the Most High, but of their leader. Try to walk like their leader, try to talk like their leader, chasing around, trying to carry their Bibles, all kinds of stuff, idolizing their leader, show their leader more respect than their own spouse. So the etymology dictionary definition of papacy, let's deal with this real quick, wrapping this up. Papacy, as we see here, papatia, in other words, papal office. And we see here from late Latin, papa, in other words, pope. But it tells us to see the pope. Definition for pope to get an understanding of what papacy means. So let's go to pope. it says Bishop of Rome. So Pope, Papa, Bishop, Pope, right? We see that this is interchangeable. Papa, Bishop, Pope, Patriarch, Bishop, originally Father, right? Remember, Pope, Papa, right, is originally what? Father. Call no man father. Look at what we see happening right now with the Pope. Whenever you say Pope and you calling him the Father, you referring to him as Father, Papas, Patriarch, Bishop, Father. And many that are carrying these titles, they are taking on the spirit of the Pope with all the regalia and everything. So notice what it says. Oh, let me go back. It says applied to bishops of Asia Minor and taken as a title by the Bishop of Alexandria in century 250. In Western Church applied especially to the Bishop of Rome. Next, I want to deal with the word vicar. Vicar. And this is written on the Pope's hat, right? Vicar. Deputy, second in command. A substitute. Deputy, proxy. In other words, someone that when you say someone is standing in proxy, in other words, that's saying that you are a replacement, right? Transition, a substitute, deputy, proxy. Notice what it says: change, interchange, succession, a place, position. So the original notion, look what it says. The original notion is of earthly representation of God or Christ, but also is used in a sense of a person acting as parish priest in place of a real parson. Okay, so in 1302, Pope Boniface VIII issued a papal bull stating that the Pope, Papa, the papacy, has authority over two realms. It says the most famous papal document of the Middle Ages, affirming the authority of the Pope as the heir of Peter. See, they teach when the Messiah said, on this rock, I'm going to build my, it's not church, but anyway, but that's what it's transliterated to, church, when actually is what? The call, in other words, the whole, excuse me, clear my throat. Quahal ha adaf yasharallah, right? Ha kal quahal ha adaf yasharallah. The entire what? The whole assembly of witnesses, the Israelites, of the Israelites. That's what that means. So the Messiah actually was not saying on this rock, I'm going to build the church, because that church, remember that word is started its usage within Catholicism and going into in the 4th century. Prior to then, they weren't using that term church. That word church, right? That word didn't even originate there. That's a whole nother discussion. Not getting into that, all of that. So affirming the authority of the Pope as the heir of Peter. So they teach when the Messiah said, on this rock, and the translations that say, I'll build my church. They're saying that what the Messiah is saying, that Peter is going to be his replacement. So they built the entire doctrine of saying that Peter is the replacement of the Messiah. The very one that denied the Messiah, now he's the replacement of the Messiah. So affirming the authority of Pope as the heir of Peter. So now saying that the Pope, Peter's the first Pope, but all the popes afterwards come as heir of Peter and vicar of Christ over all human authorities, spiritual and temporal. Spiritual power, according to the bull, rests in the hands of the church. Temporal power in the hands of the kings and soldiers, but is to be exercised only as the church permits, because things spiritual are superior to things temporal. If temporal power errs, it is to be judged by the spiritual power. If lesser spiritual power err, it is to be judged by higher spiritual powers, all the way up to the supreme power, the papacy itself, which can only be judged by the Most High. That's what they said, which can only be judged by God. The papacy. No one can judge the papacy. That's the papacy. The Pope is supposed to be the replacement, the substitute for the Messiah. And the only one that can judge the Pope is God. The Pope has the authority to change and manipulate Scripture, to come up with their own laws, that they came up with their own set of commandments to do away with celebrating and honoring the Shabbat. Right? We declare, state, and define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subjected to the Roman pontiff. The Pope went on in 1303 to confirm the disputed choice of Albert Habsburg of Holy Roman Emperor as Holy Roman Emperor, and announcing that the emperor was overlord over all other rulers. Look at the power of the Pope. We see even today the power of Christmas has military bases shutting down, and pretending using billions of dollars of equipment and technology to pretend that Santa Claus is flying all around the world to deliver gifts. That's the power of the Pope. So again, the Pope went on in 1303 to confirm the disputed choice of Albert Habsburg as Holy Roman Emperor, and announced that the power was overlord over over all other rulers. So had power even over the emperor, including the King of France, under the ultimate supremacy of the Pope. All right. So going back to Revelation chapter 2, verse 14 and 15. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificing to idols, and to commit fornication. So hast thou also hold them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. So we're going to stop right here. We're going to stop right here. I know I gave you guys a lot of information, but we are going to stop right here. Stop right here. Doctrine of the destruction of people, strange vines. So I hope you guys are blessed with this presentation, and looking at some of the comments here. I pray that you guys, were blessed by it. I pray that I gave you a number of sources that you can check and vet yourself. And I hope and pray that this the Most High use you guys to help free the strongholds of his people that are caught up in this suppressive system of Catholicism, Christianity, and some of these other belief systems that have that's literally holding our people hostage. So I really appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. Destructive doctrine, the doctrine of the destruction of people, strange vines. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight. And if you guys have any people or things or systems that you want to add into our bucket list, feel free to post it right now, and we'll go ahead and give them the garbage can. All right. So I encourage you guys, go back over the presentations, and I encourage you as well. And I have to put it inside the ticker. Subscribe to my alternate channel that we created here. We Woke Now Extended. Let's get that channel to 1,000 subscribers. So I want to encourage you guys, subscribe to that channel. I'm going to use that to have Shabbat services over there, right? To make sure that if something happens to this channel, we have an alternative. So I encourage you guys, put that channel, subscribe to that channel, make that your alternative channel as well. So let's go ahead and let's get into our bucket list right now. Okay. And again, for those that want to sow want to invest, want to contribute to the work that my labor, hashed, what is it? $ PastorPFR is in the ticker below. If you want to donate to the ministry. So the backup channel is, and I'll put it in the chat. We Woke Now Extended. That is the subscribe to that channel right there. We Woke Extended. Let's get that up to 100. I need to talk about it more so that way we could get the numbers up over there. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this bucket. I know this is a common consensus. I know this is unanimous. Let's throw Santa Claus inside the garbage right now, because I know that, he's guilty. Matter of fact, let's give Santa Claus a 3-piece. Let's give him a couple of sides on here, a couple of side orders, some fries, and, a pie. And let's toss it out. Toss all this junk doctrine out. All right. Who else do we have here? Who else let's see here. Let's put some names up here. All right. Somebody said here, stomp on that trash can. Somebody said stomp on the trash can. Don't just throw them in the trash can. Stomp on it too. Hanukkah. That's right. The poor teachings, the deceptive teachings of Hanukkah, of saying that it's all about a lamp, the oil in a lamp burning for 8 days. That's nowhere in the Maccabees that supports that. What else do we have here? All right, let's see here. There we go. Yep. Let's throw the papa. Let's give the garbage can here. All right, let's see here. All right, who else do we have here? What are some of the other ones we see here? Let's see here. All right, throw Sister Carol inside the garbage can right now. Let's give Sister Carol the garbage can right now. For trying to say something about my tardiness. All right. And matter of fact, let's throw those that are behaving very immature, that's crying about what's on the pews, crying that the church corrected the information, and now they are now doing this right here. So yeah, let's toss them inside the garbage can as well. Who else do we have there? Wrapping up, we'll do a couple more. All right, let's see here. The Christmas tree. Yeah, let's throw the Christmas tree. Let's give the Christmas tree the garbage can. Okay, let's see who else here as we get ready to wrap it up. That's right, TBN and CBN. We gotta throw all of them in the garbage can. It's a lot of crazy things that are going on. So let's give them the garbage can. All right, family. But I really appreciate you guys for taking the time out to watch this presentation tonight. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you for really investing your time, because these presentations, this information, I didn't get this information overnight. It took hours upon hours upon hours, and research and study and resources to purchase. And it's a lot to come with the territory. Not trying to get into all of that, but really appreciate you guys for taking the time out to invest your time in watching this presentation. Hit the thumbs, the thumbs up, hit the like button, so that way we can really, affect the algorithms of YouTube. Get the thumbs up. So as we close this out with a word of encouragement that Moses, right, said to the people of Israel when they came to what seemed to be a dead end, when it seemed to be a lost cause, Moses, under the instructions of the Most High, said to the people, "Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of Yahweh." These Egyptians that you see here today, right? Whatever strongholds and things that you're dealing with today will never have power over you again. No matter what it is, depression, low self-esteem, problems with your relationships, finances, whatever it may be, will not have power over you ever again. Said the Most High will fight for you, but you have to hold your peace. And in the text where it says you have to hold your peace, it's not shalom, and some would say shalom. What's in that text is the Hebrew word karash, which means be quiet. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward.